Ayamu was an ugly chick repellent who was mysteriously murdered and resurrected as an immortal zombie. However, when he teams up with magical girls to get revenge on his killer, he gets distracted by plots and spends his immortality rizzing up baddies that want to abuse his zombie meat. Despite being a zombie, Ayamu still managed to live a normal, carefree life in school. On his way home, a cat was about to become Truck Coon's next victim, so the idiot decided to play Superman but was immediately yeeted aside, and as he spun, he ripped an NPC's wig off and had the bush strip him down to his AA batteries, which scared the girls. Later, he arrived home exhausted, and when he saw Euclid, his roommate, he thanked her for turning him into a zombie. However, she ignored the fact that he looked like a coal miner and demanded he make dinner immediately. As they ate dinner later that night, he tried to play the loving brother, which made Euclid fracture his arm. This made him recall she was really a necromancer from the underworld and how she brought him back from the dead after he was stabbed by the neighborhood Jack the Ripper. As he rested on the balcony, his friend Orito called him to inform him about a new murder on the news and asked him to stay safe so he could keep copying his physics assignments. On hearing this, he took a walk around town and recalled how he'd been playing Batman trying to find the murderer every night in hopes of getting revenge. He soon found himself in a graveyard, which was rather comforting since he was a zombie. He was planning to bring a sofa so he could relax there when his thoughts were interrupted by a maniac fighting with a chainsaw. As he freaked out, the chainsaw maniac showed up dressed like a low-budget Temu cosplayer as she tried to slice him in half. He accused the lowly, whose name was Haruna, of being the serial murderer since she almost impaled him, but just then, the bear she was fighting clawed him like yesterday's hot dog. She then promised to avenge him, so she kick-started her magical chainsaw and sliced both Ayamu and the bear, saying he was collateral damage. Unfortunately, he was still alive and told her he was a zombie, which she found hard to believe even after claiming she was a genius magical girl. She claimed the bear was something called a megalo, and she got points for slaying them. Ayamu was going on about how she was terrible at her job, so she stopped him, saying she had to wipe his memories due to her school's protocols. However, the moment she activated the spell, her clothes vanished along with her last surviving brain cell, so she stopped him for being so cultured he would steal her powers to see some plot. After pummeling him till his face grew rice balls, she followed him home and had him asking what she wanted with him. She then explained that since he stole her powers, he had to house her until her powers return, as well as making high-quality meals and snacks to grow her chestnut. He also introduced her to Euclid and helped her use a modern cell phone to call her magical school principal to report her situation. At school the next day, the sun was so bright that Ayamu was mummified as zombies didn't function well during the day. When classes were over, Orito tried asking him why he didn't walk home with them anymore, but he gave a bland excuse. He even brought out a new zombie movie so they could watch it in his house, but this triggered Ayamu, who knew showing the nerd he lived with 2 girls was the worst possible move. Once Orito was gone, a man worked into the classroom and said he wanted Ayamu's banana. He freaked out as he protected his twin cheeks, but the man approached him more fiercely until Haruna showed up from the window asking if he was into grandpas. She called him an idiot as the creep was obviously a megalo, and in that moment, he turned into a crawfish monster who Haruna referred to as double a class Zari. The crayfish monster said he came there because he sensed Haruna's magic and asked Ayamu why he had her magic in him. Haruna then did her best Madoka impression as she transformed into her magical girl form, but the form only lasted a second before all her armors disappeared again. It emitted a white fog which enveloped the area and tried to unalive Haruna with its claws because it had no use for a magicless idiot, but Ayamu jumped in like a meat shield. The megalo launched one of its large pincers at them, but Ayamu stopped it with one hand before explaining that his zombie abilities gave him the ability to draw the full potential of his physical strength in a way that was impossible for normal humans. He proceeded to pummel the monster using punches that were 100% above his physical strength level, which left his arm shattered. When the crayfish monster got back up, Haruna told Ayamu to use her chainsaw, which was named Mistletoe, by transforming into a magical girl with the magic power he had in him. She guided him through the incantation, and Ayamu indeed transformed into her magical girl form, which Haruna said would give him enough defense to match his crazy offensive power. Using the power of Mistletoe, Ayamu pushed the crayfish monster outside the school and finished it off by slicing it in half, the same way Haruna did with the bear earlier. However, his fairy dreams became a nightmare when the entire school started taking pictures of him in a magical girl outfit, and Haruna escalated the matter by officially appointing him to be a new magic-clad girl. Ayumu was able to save himself from an eternity of getting trolled and bullied by his schoolmates by erasing all of their memories using magic, and he managed to get through an entire week without encountering any other megalo attacks. One day in school, Ayumu opened up the lunch which Haruna made for him and was shocked to see that it looked like something out of Gordon Ramsay's most elite menu. When he gave it a taste, it blew his mind away, so Oriko decided to try it out as well, and before Ayumu knew it, his entire class took over his lunch in exchange for some bread. When Ayumu got back home, he complimented the chef and she told him to make some dinner for them, which he did. They were all having fun during dinner until a strange girl appeared at the table and demanded to have some miso soup. After sharing a meal with them, the mystery girl introduced herself as Seraphim, and her name made Ayumu instantly guess that she came from a strange foreign land. She revealed that she was skilled at using something called the shallow reversal secret sword technique, and Ayumu couldn't concentrate on her incoherent yappings because he was staring at the enormous war stoppers she was carrying. Seraphim said her mission was to ask Euclid to accompany her willingly to the village of ninjas and revealed that she was a vampire ninja. Ayumu tried to process the garbage she was spewing until Euclid told him through writing that he should send her away. Seraphim asked Ayumu what he was to Euclid, and he revealed that he was something of a guardian to her, which made Seraphim request to serve her as well. She told them to call her Sira, but Euclid declined while claiming she only needed one servant. Seraphim decided to take Ayumu's place, and she asked him to follow her to a secluded place where they could throw hands. Ayumu said he didn't want to fight a girl, but Seraphim demanded to face him as a contest to prove which one of them was more fit to serve Euclid, so he reluctantly agreed. They stared each other down in a construction site where Ayumu told Haruna he didn't need her help, and she replied that she had no intention of giving him any in the first place. Ayumu asked Sira if she really intended to unalive him, and she replied that she had to do it to further her mission. She pointed out that he wasn't a living human, and this surprised Ayumu because no one so far has had enough brain cells to figure that out. She said she knew because of her ninja skills, which she claimed she'd use in cutting him down repeatedly until he couldn't get up anymore. When she created a sword by fusing several floating leaves, Ayumu reminded her that zombies still felt pain, so she asked if he was already throwing the towel. Ayumu replied that he wouldn't let a low-rent Tsunade rip-off take away his glorious queen, so she charged at him with several attempts at tearing him open with her sword. Ayumu dodged her attacks until she randomly disappeared into thin air and started preaching about her shallow reversal technique again. Suddenly, she appeared behind Ayumu and landed a brutal slash on his back, which took him to the ground while she bad-mouthed him. He realized he'd underestimated how powerful she was when she overwhelmed him with her super-fast strikes, and it took every bit of strength he had just to dodge her attacks. Sira slashed his hand away and tried to finish him off by impaling him in the chest. But Ayumu held onto her sword with his super strength while it was inside him to stop her from using her technique and pulled off a Tanjiro special by headbutting her at 250% physical power. Unfortunately, the attack did him more damage than it did her, so she was able to fly up in the air and fire ranged attacks using the shallow reversal technique on him. Ayumu managed to get her off the air by throwing his hand at her gut, but she took him out on her way down by throwing a shuriken at his head. After that exchange, Sira admitted defeat as a way of showing her pride as a vampire ninja before teleporting away. When Ayumu and Haruna got home, they were shocked to see Sira serving Euclid some tea, and when Ayumu asked why she didn't go home, she replied that it was her new home. Sira said she had no choice but to become Ayumu's servant, and he immediately tried to take advantage of the situation by saying she'd have to obey all the weird commands he was trying to give her, so she put him in his place by calling him a filthy animal. Ayumu was resting on his bed that night when Sira invaded his room through the ceiling and told him that Euclid had closed off her heart. Ayumu said it was how she was, but Sira argued that something was wrong since Euclid didn't even consider her offer, and she asked Ayumu to do something about it before leaving his room. He remembered how he was instantly captivated when he met her a month ago, but fumbled the bag in his attempt to riz her up by showing off some of Chris Brown's dance moves. She woke him up after he fell down like a goofball and had a fun conversation with him, which marked the start of their friendship. On his way back home that night, he overheard a woman being attacked in a mysterious building, and like every dumb horror movie character ever, he ran into the building to check out what was going on. He saw some blood in the first floor of the building and tried to move to the second floor, which was where the scream was coming from when his body suddenly froze up. The assassin appeared behind him and turned him into a bloody donut. He woke up several hours later in a graveyard where Euclid revealed that she prevented his death with her necromancer powers and asked to stay with him. Back in the present, Ayumu and the girls were having fun at dinner when Euclid suddenly called to their attention after Haruna playfully told Ayumu to die. She told her not to use those words so casually, but Haruna stupidly decided to continue saying it, so she smacked her across the face and said that death was painful. Some days later, Haruna was having a goofy dream where she was fighting in her magic-clad girl form against a giant pudding when a weird alarm clock woke her up by piercing her head. At the breakfast table, Sira asked why there were so many weird objects at their home, and Ayumu replied that his parents kept sending them to him from countries he'd never heard of. He spoke about how they left him all on his own while they traveled the world, and Sira said it was the reason he became such a miserable idiot. Haruna was excited when she saw that the last piece of pudding was still in the fridge, but when she grabbed it, Euclid showed up and grabbed her hand. The two of them decided to play a game of Jenga to decide who would get the pudding, and Sira joined them with the intention of splitting the pudding in half between herself and Euclid if she won. While the girls were having fun at home, Ayumu was fighting for his life at school because the sun was so intense that Ayumu had to carry an umbrella over his head during class so he wouldn't get barbecued. Orito tried to rizz up some girls in their class by asking them to go bowling with him, but all of them declined, so he asked Ayumu instead. Ayumu had zero interest in bowling, but when he noticed the girls staring at them, he decided to save his friend from losing more aura points by accepting his offer. Meanwhile, Sira used her ninja techniques to stack up the Jenga blocks in a way she thought was impossible to defeat, until Haruna used her chainsaw to pull an insane move that won her the game. When she started celebrating, Sira reminded her that the game was only meant to have a loser and not a winner, so they decided to switch gears and settle the score using shogi. Euclid ended up winning the game easily, so they switched to a game of Twister and Euclid handled the spinner wheel while the other two positioned themselves on the mats while talking about Ayumu. At the same time, Ayumu and Orito were chilling in the bowling alley when Orito started talking about his gooner fantasies with women, which made even Ayumu cringe hard. Just then, they saw Euclid, Sira and Haruna tearing up the alley and Orito immediately started cooking up sus stories about them. But Ayumu was terrified because he knew he'd be cooked if anyone from school found out that he lived with them. Ayumu asked to go to the bathroom, but Orito stopped him by saying that it was his turn to bowl. Ayumu realized that the girls had spotted him, so he did his best to hide his face, but it didn't take long before Haruna started calling out to him. Being the absolute doofus that he is, Orito started aura farming because he thought Haruna was falling for his riz, but his delusions shattered when she came by and talked to Ayumu instead of him. Ayumu was an even more hopeless idiot than his friend, so he used a goofy mask to cover his face and introduced himself as *masked Ayumu. The other girls came by and asked him to take the dumb mask off, so Orito crashed out as he asked Ayumu repeatedly if he knew the girls. Sira accurately pointed out that the dumb mask made Ayumu look more handsome than he usually was, so Orito realized that Ayumu knew them and Haruna escalated the matter even further by revealing that they lived in the same house as him. Orito had an even crazier crash out as he asked Ayumu to explain what was going on, and when he did, Orito felt bad about the fact that his best bud was keeping such a juicy secret from him. When Ayumu apologized, Orito said it was okay and asked how far he'd gone with them while imagining some sus scenes between Ayumu and the girls that made him bash his head into a bowling ball repeatedly. With a bloody head, he told Ayumu he was jealous of him, and Ayumu said there was nothing to be jealous about because he'd be turned into a sandbag if he ever attempted anything with them. Orito was still weirdly jealous, so he challenged Ayumu to a game of bowling under the stipulation that he'd start living at their house if he wins. However, Ayumu defeated him easily, and he got a text on his phone from a girl who was inviting him to come see her in a particularly sweet manner.
You know what time it is?
Ayumu and Orito went to the hospital where the girl from the text was staying, and Orito informed Ayumu that the reason he was tagging along was because the girl, who was named Kyoko, wanted to see him. Orito pointed out that Kyoko was like a sister to him, implying that he'd skin him alive if he attempted anything weird with him. Ayumu asked what Kyoko was doing at the hospital, so Orito revealed that she was a victim of the assassin. When they got to Kyoko's room, she asked Ayumu if he remembered her from their middle school, but Ayumu said he didn't. After confirming that her injuries had gotten better, Kyoko revealed that he'd be going to stay with her grandfather in Kyoto when she gets released from the hospital. She thanked Orito for bringing Ayumu to the hospital, and Orito left the room in order to give them some alone time. Ayumu asked her if she saw the person who attacked her, and she confessed that she did with a bit of fear in her voice. He asked what the assassin looked like, so she revealed that he had beautiful blue eyes and gave some other descriptions which Ayumu realized was referring to Euclid. Seeing Ayumu's spooked reaction, she asked if he knew the assassin, and he replied that it only sounded like someone he knew. Kyoko demanded to know the identity of the assassin because they unalived her parents, and Ayumu told her that the person he was referring to was a mute. Ayumu noticed a wooden sword under her bed, so she explained it was given to her by her grandfather for protection in case the assassin came to finish the job. She clung to him while expressing how scared she was that the murderer could come for her, and Ayumu was shook by the fact that the assassin could actually be Euclid. Several days later, Haruna was using all of the moves she learned from Food Wars to make dinner, and Ayumu was looking at Euclid while thinking about his conversation with Kyoko at the hospital, unknown to them that a mysterious person was watching them from outside their house. Their dinner ended up being a calamity beyond their comprehension, so Ayumu asked Haruna what happened. Haruna said it turned out that way because she had Sira help her with dinner, and Sira said it was her first attempt at cooking before inviting Ayumu to give it a try. Ayumu tried to eat it up, but his chopsticks melted, and Sira boasted that her dish was so overpowered that you couldn't eat it with something weak. They forced Ayumu to eat her disaster food despite the fact that it literally melted everything it touched, and all it took was one sip to send his Smurf-sized brain spiraling into another dimension. When Ayumu woke up, the girls said they were hungry, so Ayumu ordered some pizza and seafood for them before Haruna took the phone to call her instructor Dai. On the phone, she told Dai that she hadn't found a particular artifact they were after, and when Sira asked what the artifact was, Haruna said it was something they called fear. When the doorbell rang, Ayumu thought it was the delivery guy arriving in record time, but it turned out to be the mysterious dog man who'd been creeping outside their apartment named Cerberus Wizard. Ayumu asked if he was something called a Doberman, but Cerberus revealed that he was a megalo known as the watchdog of the underworld who existed only to allow entry to the other side and prevent anyone from leaving. Cerberus brought up the fact that Ayumu managed to escape the underworld after visiting there, and this made Ayumu realize that the overgrown mutt was trying to drag him back to hell. The two of them started squaring off, and their battle spilled into the living room when Cerberus injured Ayumu in the arm. Euclid healed Ayumu's arm using magic, and Cerberus instantly recognized her as his master. After she explained the whole situation with Ayumu to him, he apologized and left their house while telling them that he intended to collect the soul of the person being unalived in the area. Ayumu was instantly alarmed by the news of the assassin resurfacing, so he followed Cerberus on his trip. They landed on a certain rooftop where Cerberus explained that Euclid takes on the pain of whichever person she heals, implying that she felt the same pain Ayumu did when she healed him. He went further to say that she was a special being who was at the center of everything, and that she chose to heal his injuries because she saw him as a special person as well. They went into the scene of the crime where they saw a bloodied body, and Cerberus said the soul was no longer in the area. He revealed that a lot of souls hadn't been making it to the underworld recently, and presumed that those souls must have been sacrificed by someone as an offering to gain an unbelievable amount of power. Ayumu asked who the offering was for, and Cerberus replied that it was for someone who was referred to as the King of the Night. All of a sudden, the sword-wielding assassin showed up and tried to unalive Ayumu, but Cerberus jumped in to save him. Unfortunately, they both got stabbed at once like a kebab, and Ayumu realized that he couldn't move his body similar to how it was when he was first bodied. He also couldn't get a glimpse of the assassin's face as they both fell to the floor, and Cerberus told Ayumu to take care of Euclid as he vanished into nothingness. When Ayumu returned home, he told Euclid about their encounter with the assassin and asked her why she suppresses her emotions. She explained in writing that disturbances and uncertainties cause her magic to lose control in a way that could affect the string of fate and change reality. She also revealed that the reason she couldn't speak wasn't because she was role-playing Nezuko, but rather because her words carried magic. She didn't know which of her words would have magical implications, so she decided not to say a single word ever again. Ayumu asked if she could at least make noises, but she said she couldn't, and explained that intense pain ran through her head when her words became magic, which was something she didn't want to happen again. She also told him that her blood grants immortality because her heart sources a tremendous amount of power, and explained that she wore her gauntlets and plate armor to suppress her magic because her powers didn't obey her will. She added that her powers will continue working after she dies, and Ayumu replied that it was messed up. She started crying as she said that Ayumu probably hated her, and Ayumu angrily asked why she would ever say that. She said it was because her emotions affected him the strongest and called herself a monster, but Ayumu argued that she was a kind girl. She asked if she could continue staying with him, so Ayumu literally took a page out of her book by writing some comforting words to her. He told her to laugh whenever she wanted and promised to take care of fate if something happened, implying that he was ready to take on the King of Fear, nuclear missiles, or even Goku to continue staying with her.
Whoa, calm down, Jamal.
The next day, a giant whale appeared in the city, so Sira flew Ayumu to the location and launched him at it, allowing him to deliver a heavy kick. Haruna revealed that the monster was a class a megalo called the Defeated and Weak Blue Whale before telling Ayumu to transform into his magic-clad girl form. Ayumu transformed and assured Eucliwood that he'd handle the situation before leaping into the air to join Sira in having a standoff with the whale. The whale fired a massive laser beam at Ayumu, which he dodged before asking Haruna how to defeat the whale. Haruna said the best way was to cut off the head, but he complained that it was too thick. The whale tried to impale them using several water attacks, but Ayumu and Sira dodged all of them, and Haruna provided an assist by using what was left of her magic power to create a force field that held the whale up in the sky. Ayumu asked Sira to increase the size of her sword so that it would be large enough to cut the monster's neck, and once she did that, Ayumu boosted his powers beyond 400% since magical girls had no limit. Sira charged at the whale, dodging several of its laser beams before using her shallow reversal technique to make a deep cut on its neck. Ayumu boosted his powers to 1000%, which gave him a girlier look, but also allowed him to launch himself like a comet as he delivered a dropkick that beheaded the whale. Later that night, Kyoko unalived herself in the hospital room by slashing her own neck with a blade. Some days later, Sira suddenly started kissing Haruna intensely and sucking her blood using her vampire abilities while Ayumu watched from a hidden spot. But unfortunately, they noticed him peeking and called him a disgusting degenerate. A while later, Sira explained that she'd die if she didn't drink blood periodically, and Ayumu asked why she needed to kiss Haruna if all she needed to do was suck her blood, implying that she might be more into women than men. Sira explained that the smooching worked as an anesthetic, so Ayumu requested for her to suck his blood sometimes, but she immediately rejected his offer by saying she'd never drink a disgusting virgin's blood that probably tasted like horse urine. Later that evening, Haruna transformed into her magic-clad girl form, but once again, it vanished into thin air, leaving her in a very revealing form when Ayumu came by to invite her for dinner. She rushed to close the door, but Ayumu once again proved to be a brainless buffoon as he forced himself into the room and saw her in her compromised form, causing her to kick him out using some Jackie Chan moves. Some hours later, the girls were having fun in the bath when Ayumu got a call from a lady who turned out to be Instructor Dai. Ayumu introduced himself as the magic-clad girl who was acting in Haruna's place, and she told him to tell her to forget about the Kaio Tofu, which was the name of the mission she was sent on. Ayumu asked if she was talking about the artifact, and she confirmed that she was, so he realized that Haruna's lack of basic Japanese knowledge made her mix up Kaio Tofu with fear. Dai revealed that she loved Kyoto Tofu, so Ayumu promised to get her some and asked why Haruna came to Tokyo and not Kyoto. Dai said she sent her to Kyoto to get the Kaio Tofu, and Ayumu asked why she couldn't just order some for herself directly. She replied that she couldn't because she overspent and couldn't charge her credit card, meaning she'd have to pay him on delivery. Ayumu brought up the fact that Haruna cockily calls herself a genius despite having the IQ of a mentally impaired bullfrog, so Dai explained that Haruna didn't remember the names of people and things not because she couldn't, but because she wasn't interested. She went further to say that Haruna surprisingly remembered someone's name, and she was of course referring to Ayumu. The call got interrupted when Haruna came by and started goofing off before Ayumu got another call, which was from Kyoko this time. She told him that she was finally out of the hospital, so he emoted like a dumb Fortnite character while telling her that they'd meet the following night at a great spot he recommended. The next day, the sun was so intense that it reduced Ayumu's mental and physical strength to that of a 3-year-old, and he lounged around in school, waiting to meet up with Kyoko while hoping the sun would miraculously explode. That evening, Ayumu arrived at the meeting spot, which was a graveyard, and he remembered how Euclid told him to stay at home when he was preparing to leave for the date with Kyoko. He also remembered how Haruna tried to follow him before running off angrily like a tsundere, and his brainstorming was interrupted when Kyoko came by. She gave him the Kaio tofu he sent her to get, and he apologized for bringing her out to a weird spot like that. She said it was okay because she got to spend time with him, causing him to blush before asking her how much he needed to pay for the tofu. Kyoko said he didn't need to pay for the tofu, and Ayumu reacted like a delusional girl getting rizzed up by Justin Bieber. When she asked about his girlfriend, Ayumu said he didn't have one, so she recommended herself to be his romantic partner. Ayumu was considering her offer when she suddenly moved in close to him and stabbed him right in the back with a sword.
Women.
She mentioned how Ayumu didn't die easily, which made him realize that she wasn't a victim of the assassin, but rather the assassin herself. He asked why she unalived her own family, and she replied that they weren't her real family, but rather strangers whom she altered their memories of. Ayumu was stunned by the fact that she could use memory manipulation because he knew the only people capable of that were Magiclad girls, and she proved his suspicions to be true by transforming into her Magiclad form. She said she couldn't alter his memories no matter how hard she tried, and decided to resolve all her problems by ending him. She charged at him several times with clear attempts at slashing his head off, but Ayumu dodged her attacks, only to get sent flying by a kick. When he got back up, she launched another wave of relentless attacks and confessed that she was the one who unalived Cerberus. Ayumu tried to run away, but she immobilized him using a spell, right before Haruna made a surprise appearance alongside Sira. Haruna undid the freezing spell and asked who the attacker was. Ayumu told them that she was the Magiclad girl who ended him, and they agreed to join him in facing her. Kyoko asked Haruna how she learned how to dispel barriers, and Haruna explained that it was easy to pull it off because she knew how to create barriers. Sira handed Mistletoe to Ayumu and revealed that she was sent there by Euclid before summoning her sword and marching towards Kyoko with her eyes glowing red. When Kyoko's eyes glowed red as well, Ayumu asked if Kyoko was a vampire ninja, but Sira said the power she sensed was something else entirely. Sira tried to slash Kyoko with her shadow reversal technique, but Kyoko easily blocked her attack before blasting her with a fireball. Kyoko tried to roast Ayumu as well, but Haruna saved him with a force field and told him to be careful around fire since he was a vampire. Kyoko switched gears by firing wind attacks at them, and this made Haruna realize that she had the powers of a megalo. Sira got back up and told Ayumu to transform because he stood no chance of beating Kyoko without the magical girl boost. Ayumu transformed into his Magiclad girl form and charged at Kyoko with Sira running beside him. After dodging Kyoko's wind attacks, Ayumu clashed blades with her and asked why she unalived all of her victims. Kyoko said it was because doing so gave her immortality and crushed Ayumu in between two tornadoes which she created. She asked if she should cut Ayumu to pieces so he'd never revive again, but Ayumu responded by grabbing onto her with his boosted fairy strength, allowing Sira to take Kyoko down by stabbing her blade through Ayumu and into her body. Before they could take a victory lap, Kyoko pulled the ultimate twist by slashing Sira and confessing that she had 10 more lives. She blasted a huge fireball at them, which got frozen in its path as Euclid made a dramatic entrance.
Let's go.
Kyoko fired 2 tornado spells at Euclid, which she dispelled without even lifting a finger. That only got Kyoko more excited because she sang praises to Euclid while blasting her with more spells, but Euclid's version of Gojo's Infinity was just too solid for her magic to penetrate. Kyoko tried to Pikachu her with some lightning blasts, but her force field got the job done once again, and Euclid stunned everyone when she took Mistletoe and transformed into a Magiclad girl. After his very first experience with Haruna, Ayumu knew that magic gets absorbed by stronger magic, so seeing Euclid pull off this transformation made him realize that she was the one who was attracting all the megalo in the area. Kyoko started running her mouth about how Euclid gave up her life as a necromancer to play house with a degenerate loser and fired several flame blasts at her, which ended up getting blocked by her magic barrier. This made Kyoko dance in a sus way while saying she wanted Euclid's magic, and Ayumu tried to get involved in the upcoming battle, but he was stopped by some words which Euclid burnt on the ground, which told him to stay back. Euclid and Kyoko went to a different part of the battlefield where Kyoko revealed that her multiple lives made her capable of surpassing the limiters of the human body before firing a magic blast at 100%. She fired several more blasts at 150 and 200%, but they all couldn't leave a dent on Euclid's magic barrier. As Euclid approached her slowly, Kyoko went even crazier with her attacks, firing blasts at 300%, 400 and even 500%, but the results stayed the same. Kyoko started gasping for air out of exhaustion with her arms completely fried because of the backlash of her own attacks, and Euclid burnt some words into the ground which told her to go home, but instead she charged up another blast. Euclid whispered a single word that unalived Kyoko, and Ayumu watched in shock, while Sira explained that Euclid used the magic in her words to end Kyoko by saying the word die. Ayumu realized that this ability was why she got really angry when Haruna casually told him to die, and it also explained why she suppressed her magic by holding back her words and emotions when she was around her friends. Kyoko struggled back to her feet, but Euclid sent her right back into the dirt by whispering the word die again, and she kept spamming this overpowered one-word doom ability even though it caused her immense physical pain as Kyoko kept getting back up. It got to a point where Kyoko countered this move by destroying her own eardrums and grabbed onto Euclid before releasing her magic energy at full power. This attack put Euclid out of commission, so Kyoko started bragging to them about how having multiple lives was the most awesome thing ever. Haruna grabbed onto Mistletoe while expressing how angry she was about Euclid's defeat, and Sira also told Ayumu that she intended to pummel the psychotic witch with a new technique she created. The three of them charged at Kyoko, and Sira used her new technique, which was to attack with a huge swarm of leaves at once, but Kyoko easily countered by blowing her away. Haruna tried to retaliate by cleaving her with Mistletoe, but Kyoko easily ragdolled her to the ground. Just when they thought they'd seen the limits of Kyoko's craziness, she stabbed herself through the chest with her sword, which allowed her to regenerate all of her barbecued limbs as well as her burst eardrums. Kyoko decided to take their life as quickly as possible since she'd already lost many of the lives she previously stacked up, and Ayumu decided to level the playing field by transforming into a magic-clad girl. Kyoko launched a slash attack which tore through Ayumu, and instead of Ayumu to dodge or fight back, he started yapping about the value of life, which only created an opening for her to slash him several more times. On the floor, Ayumu told Euclid that it was time for them to go home for dinner, and this got Kyoko so angry that she tried to split Ayumu in half with her sword. Ayumu stopped her sword with her bare hands and shattered it before getting back up. As he walked towards her, he thanked her for unaliving him because the life he was currently living was less lonely than the one he had before, and he grabbed her hand while claiming that it was time for him to change her life as well. Kyoko said she had the artifact of life, and Ayumu replied that he'd continue unaliving her until she ran out of stolen lives. She got him to let go of her by blasting him in the chest, but he pulled an Uno reverse by splitting her in half with the chainsaw while on the floor. When her body reattached itself, she tried to attack him again, but Ayumu proceeded to slash her apart over and over again with the chainsaw until she started running away in fear. Ayumu knew she was down to her last life, and despite her efforts to beg for mercy, Ayumu said she had to pay for all the lives she'd stolen. He pointed out that all of her victims, including himself, were just as terrified of death as she was when she unalived them before launching the mother of all Detroit smashes at her. It turned out that Ayumu spared her by targeting the area beside her head, and he met up with Euclid, who thanked him for his heroic efforts before demanding a feast for dinner. Their friendly conversation was interrupted when they noticed that Dai had arrived and was checking on Kyoko. Dai told Ayumu that she'd have ended him if he really intended to unalive Kyoko, and Ayumu scolded her for not doing a better job of raising her. Dai revealed that she had tens of millions of students, implying that she couldn't possibly train them all, and Ayumu was still crashing out, so she decided to shut him up by roasting him with a huge wave of flame magic. She said she was going to take Kyoko home to re-educate her, and Ayumu asked why she didn't come sooner if that was her purpose, so she revealed that she was there to collect the tofu which he promised her. When Kyoko reawakened, Dai told her it was time to go home, but they were interrupted when the King of the Night took over her and told them that they'd meet again before vanishing with her body. Dai told Haruna that she'd be going after him before teleporting away, and Euclid revealed that the King of the Night was emitting a black mist, which was similar to the power of a zombie she'd destroyed. Much later, Ayamu was pondering over the recent events while eating some rice balls when Haruna and Sira started causing a ruckus in the kitchen. He started fawning over Euclid, who was feasting beside him, and asked her if there were any other zombies but him. She said she once turned a man into a zombie who ended up getting consumed by malice, forcing her to unalive him. Ayumu asked if he was her lover, but she instantly gave a negative response, so he tried to riz her up by saying he was there for her. He brought up how he was invincible thanks to her power, and also how they had Sira and Haruna, which made Euclid smile before the girls interrupted them by inviting Ayamu to try out a new dish they made. When they left, Ayamu asked Euclid what she thought of life at the moment, and she replied that it wasn't bad. Several days later, Ayamu was burning the midnight candle, trying to study for the upcoming exams because Orito told him he needed to lock in so he could fix his horrendous grades. Haruna started yapping about some weird science concept she called the superstring theory, which explained the origins of the universe instead of just teaching him maths like he asked. Ayamu's brain was about to burn out from all the incoherent nonsense she was rambling when Euclid asked him to show her his math problems. When he gave it to her, she easily solved all of it, making Haruna jealous that he'd now ditched her class to simp for Euclid. Haruna tried to show workings on the math problems, the way Euclid did, but ended up drawing a map of the One Piece universe on his worksheet instead. On the day of the test, Ayamu was having an easy time because he realized that the dumb magical girl actually predicted the questions correctly, but he noticed her sticking to the glass window from the outside, so he closed the curtains. When he opened it back and showed her his test script, she yelled as she informed him that there was a megalo in the area, which made him crash out in a way that alerted the rest of the class. Afterwards, he called Sira to ask if she could sense the megalo, but she said she couldn't before asking Euclid to help out. Euclid revealed that Haruna and the megalo were at the 3rd District apartment complex and told Ayamu to hurry, so he rushed over there. On his way to the building, he got a call from Dai who asked him to hold onto something and not let Haruna find out about it. After she ended the call, Ayamu realized that there were no other shades for him to hide under, meaning that he had to run 100 meters under the sun in order to get to the apartment building. He locked in and tried to do his best flash impression, but the sun fried him so badly that he had to jump into the nearby river. At the moment, Haruna was being overwhelmed by a weird horse-shaped megalo who dodged all of her chainsaw attacks before taking her out with some poison gas. While she was on the ground, the horse megalo tried to raid her dungeon, but Ayamu stopped him by pulling back his hair. The horse megalo flung Ayamu away from him, but Ayamu clapped him back with several hard hits, which sent him flying before the sun roasted Ayamu again. Haruna told Ayamu to transform because he was dealing with an A-class megalo, so Ayamu did so in his dehydrated state and realized that the sun didn't affect him in his magiclad girl form. Ayamu and the horse megalo clashed fiercely, and despite Haruna's warnings for him to watch his back, he still couldn't react in time to stop himself from getting stabbed and electrocuted by some jellyfish megalo which appeared in the area. The jellyfish megalo retracted its claws when it accidentally felt his man marbles, and part of the jellyfish swarm shifted their attention to Haruna while the jellyfish boss continued to Pikachu Ayamu. When Ayamu begged for help, a weird guy showed up and spilled some ramen on all the megalo in the area, which destroyed them. He was about to get ambushed by a jellyfish megalo, but Sira showed up just in time to take it out. He tried to catch up with Sira, but Sira denied her efforts to hug her by putting him in a painful WWE move before revealing to Ayamu that he was a vampire ninja from an opposing faction named Maelstrom. Ayamu and Maelstrom started arguing over who was the strongest Dragon Ball character, and Haruna got so annoyed that she pushed Ayamu into Maelstrom, causing him to fall on top of him with their lips locked together. When Ayamu tried to get back up, he realized that his hands were grasping some soft cushions on Maelstrom's body, which made him realize it was a girl, but Haruna and Sira gave him no time to process his new discovery before pummeling him mercilessly. Maelstrom took Ayamu and Sira to her secret base and said she did so because Ayamu wanted to know the secret of her ramen. When they tasted the ramen, Ayamu said it was delicious, so Maelstrom handed him some of her food as well. He asked how the ramen was capable of defeating Megalo, causing her to explain that they amplified pork cutlet ramen from ramen booths all over the world in order to make that particular pork bone soup, implying that the soup was created with a recipe they derived from stealing all of the recipes from great restaurants. Ayumu wasn't satisfied with her answer, so he asked why she was covering Megalo with ramen, and she used a book as large as an encyclopedia to explain the entire process, leaving Ayumu exhausted. She offered to touch on the superstring theory, but Ayumu declined because he wasn't willing to relive that nightmare lesson. So she went further to reveal that the machine in the room was set to rain pork cutlet soup when a horde of Megalo appeared. Sarah called Maelstrom's yappings ridiculous and attempted to leave, but Maelstrom stopped her and told her that someone intended to destroy the machine. She asked Sarah to join them, but Sarah declined as she walked away, and Ayumu said he'd be joining Sarah, so Maelstrom angrily told him to get out. On the way home, Ayumu brought up the machine, so Sarah revealed that it could cause harm to the ecosystem, which was why her superiors were looking into it. She also revealed that for vampire ninjas, a kiss only happens during a marriage ceremony and the time or place didn't matter, which meant that Ayumu and Maelstrom were now married. Ayumu asked if that was the reason she didn't want to suck his blood, and she responded positively before adding that his repulsiveness also contributed to making her reject him. He asked if kissing her at that moment would mean that they were married, and she confirmed that if he did so, she would indeed promise her love to him. He stared at her milk factories and started fantasizing, so she crushed his dreams by promising to scrape his family jewels off if he ever tried. When they got home, they saw Haruna and Euclid decorating a tree, and Ayumu asked what it was for, so Haruna revealed that it was something called a Tanabata. She explained that when a river of stars flowed across the sky, a legendary man came out with two beasts wearing clothes covered in blood of his victims and carrying a sack large enough to hold a person. Under the cover of darkness, he entered homes marked with bamboo trees standing like chimneys, and this deadly Santa Claus would grant the wish of anyone with a ponytail. When she finished her goofy Christmas story, Ayumu said he knew more about that stuff than her, and they all proceeded to write some cards which they attached to the Christmas tree. Afterwards, they ate some shaved ice together while staring at the midnight sky. The next day, Ayumu was approached in class by a strange girl who gave him a box which she said was now his own. She yelled at someone on the phone in a manner that startled Ayumu before walking off, and Ayumu saw that the box contained a pair of glasses. Maelstrom came by and handed Ayumu a lunch pack while explaining that it was normal for a wife to make food for her husband. She started yapping about how she had no choice but to become his wife, and added that it was always her dream to get married. Orito showed up and called out to Maelstrom in a familiar manner, so Ayumu asked if he knew her. Orito said she was a student from the next class named Tamanori, so she beat him up while telling that Tamanori wasn't her name. Ayumu asked where he got the name Tamanori from, so Orito wrote out the name on the board, which spelled out Yoshida Yuki, and said it could be read as Tamanori. Maelstrom forced the glasses on Ayumu and told him to take a closer look, but it only ended up giving him X-ray vision, thereby revealing her exposed form to him. Some days later, Ayumu was walking to school while flexing the awesome abilities of his new glasses when he suddenly got whacked in the face by a golf club, causing the glasses to fly off his face. He pulled off some elite acrobatic skills in order to save the glasses from being destroyed, only for Sarah to show up out of nowhere and take it from him. When she tried them on and saw what they were capable of, she wasted no time to insult him by calling him every possible synonym of the word degenerate. The next morning, Haruna was having ridiculous dreams again. This time it was about Ayumu showing up all dressed up in his magical girl drip, making her so excited that everything she was putting on suddenly vanished. When he rizzed her up and tried to kiss her, Haruna woke up and took the frustration out on the real Ayumu by beating him to a pulp. As if that weren't enough, Sarah accused him of somehow sneaking into Haruna's dreams to fulfill his weird fantasies and proceeded to call him a miserable piece of junk. When Ayumu got to school, he opened the lunch which Haruna packed for him, but discovered that it wasn't as luscious as it usually was. However, when Orito came by to be a pathetic beggar as usual, he praised the food for being delicious and invited the whole class to grab a bite as usual. Hours later, Maelstrom met up with a girl from Ayumu's class named Kanami in a diner and told her that she wanted to learn to like Ayumu. Kanami asked why it had to be Ayumu, and Maelstrom was careful not to drop any specifics as she said had to like him because of certain circumstances. When Nanami asked what kind of circumstances she was referring to, Maelstrom said she wanted to like him but didn't know how to since she'd never fallen for a guy before. She then revealed that she was his wife and said she wanted him to like her. Nanami's classmate who was with them asked if she was really his wife, so she claimed she was his school wife before saying she wanted to be the kind of wife he wants. Konami gave it a bit of thought and came to the conclusion that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach, which gave her weird fantasies, causing her to lose control until a muscular Rey Mysterio cosplaying servant told her to shut up. Konami pointed out that trying to win him over by making lunch for him might prove to be difficult because his lunches were already very delicious, but Maelstrom said she'd never give up. Konami also advised her to stop talking like a boy and try to charm him by acting differently from how she always did. She presumed that Ayumu liked lolis, implying that Maelstrom could try to win him over by doing some one-chan roleplay. The next day, Maelstrom gave Ayumu some lunch which she made for him, and when he opened it, he saw that it was made with all the romantic bliss in the world. When Orito tried to take a bite, she smacked his hand away because she wanted Ayumu to have the first bite. Everything seemed to be working out for her romantically until she decided to add some finishing touches to the meal, which was pouring a ridiculous amount of a bunch of different sauces on it in a manner that made it look like something a cat pooped out. Meanwhile, Sarah was doing laundry at home when a mysterious paper came flying at her. When she read through the letter, she saw that it was a mission, so she stared closely at Euclid, which probably was mentioned as part of her task.
What do you mean by that?
Following Konami's advice, Maelstrom waited at the school gate for Ayumu and immediately demanded to walk home with him when she saw him, leaving him no choice but to agree. On the way home, Ayumu asked what kind of house vampire ninjas lived in, so she tried to shut him up since he was speaking too loudly, but ended up telling the word vampire ninja out herself, forcing him to shut her mouth with his palm. When some old hags passing by noticed them, they accused them of playing dirty games on the street, so their faces got red as they jumped away from each other. They eventually continued their walk, and Ayumu asked her to stop calling him her wife, but she refused, saying there was nothing she could do about it since it was the vampire ninja code. Ayumu asked if she planned on moving in with him, but she replied that she couldn't because Sira was there, and added that their character types were just too different to coexist alongside each other. When Ayumu asked what happened to the pork cutlet machine, she said it broke down, and they got to a junction where they had to split up. Ayumu proposed that they become friends instead of a married couple, and she replied that it was impossible before swearing that she'd do everything she could to like him. She asked him to do everything he could to like her back, and they were interrupted when another set of old hags accused them of reciting love poems to each other in the middle of the road. They started arguing over who was more embarrassed by the situation when Haruna showed up and revealed that she was there to get Ayumu home. She acted a bit harsh towards Ayumu out of jealousy, so he promised to take her out somewhere the next time he's free. Maelstrom saw the two of them bonding and asked to join them on their little trip, so Ayumu agreed and even proposed bringing Sira and Euclid as well. Days later, Ayumu and the girls went on their trip, and Maelstrom wasted no time before getting cozy with Ayumu, much to the disdain of Haruna, who pulled him away. The girls tried out different elegant outfits at the mall, and Ayumu was worried that the scraps he had left in his wallet were about to be dried out by all their spending. He suggested some Catgirl cosplay for Sira, and she initially denied him harshly but ended up trying them out anyway. When Ayumu tried to steal a glance of her in that outfit, she impaled his eyes with 2 shuriken. When Ayumu regained his vision, he noticed that the girls were now shopping for undergarments, and Maelstrom saw a nice night wear that made her have sus dreams about Ayumu, causing her to crash out. After their shopping, Ayumu carried a stack of shopping bags as they walked to get some food, unknown to them that a mysterious man was watching them closely. Ayumu and the girls went to a ramen place where Maelstrom tried to add some special ingredient of hers inside the dish, but Ayumu stopped her and told her to respect the chef. Afterwards, Haruna and Ayumu were seated alone while the rest of the girls were playing arcade games, and she asked him why he kissed Maelstrom. Ayumu replied that it was just an accident which was caused by her, and before Haruna could crash out properly, Maelstrom came by to drag Ayumu to play some arcade games with her. The 5 of them had tons of fun together playing games and taking pictures at the photo booth, and afterwards, they went on a Ferris wheel where Haruna said it was ridiculous for Ayumu and Maelstrom to be married after a single kiss. Sira said it was the vampire ninja code, and Haruna brought up the fact that they weren't married despite the fact that they'd shared a smooch. Sira explained that it was something she did just to suck her blood, and Maelstrom added that kisses between girls didn't count. When they got down from the ride, Haruna met up with Ayumu at a vending machine and asked him to kiss her. At the same time, Euclid was staring at all the prizes she won at the arcade when the mysterious man that was stalking them arrived and called her by name. Ayumu tried to refuse her offer, but Haruna rizzed him up the only way she knew how, by punching him mercilessly until he gave up. When they reunited with the rest of the group, they noticed that Euclid was nowhere to be found. Euclid met with the man on a rooftop and immediately stabbed him with a scythe which she summoned, but he wasn't fazed as he revealed that he came there because he noticed that she was having a lot of fun. He said it was ironic that she saw him, the one she wanted to avoid the most, on a day she was overwhelmed with happiness, and asked if she really wanted to avoid him that much. Sira said it was possible that it was one of her superiors who kidnapped Euclid and revealed that she'd received orders to unalive Euclid, causing Ayumu to ask why they'd want to eliminate her despite her initial goal of wanting to take her back to the village with her. Euclid asked the man if he hated her, and he replied that he did because he thought they'd be together forever. She said it was impossible, and he knew it was because she couldn't forgive him for unaliving something called a seventh abyss, which was why she told him to disappear in a cold manner. She asked what he wanted, and he walked to a set of binoculars in the area as he brought up the fact that she'd made friends. Sira explained to Ayumu that she received orders to assassinate Euclid because her magic was responsible for the increased appearance of Megalo, and Ayumu immediately yelled that she couldn't obey those orders. He asked if she intended to obey the orders, but she didn't give him a clear answer before deciding to look for Euclid herself. When Ayumu started yapping about how vampire ninjas were just a bootleg version of the shinobi in Naruto, Sira said he had no idea how important their missions were, and Maelstrom added that they couldn't break their code, which was why she had to go through with their marriage. Ayumu got loud as he asked Sira to genuinely say if she wanted to end Euclid or not, and Sira almost went into tears as she replied that she didn't. Haruna decided to relieve their tension by saying she was going to find Euclid herself, and when she ran off with Maelstrom, Ayumu told Sira that she was always honest. Sira thanked him for helping him make her decision and stated that she was going to abandon the mission before running off with him to join the others. The mystery man told Euclid that her friends were desperately looking for her and invited her to take a look through the binoculars. When she took a peek, he destroyed the hinges of the Ferris wheel with the snap of a finger, causing the gigantic wheel to crash into Ayumu. Ayumu survived the hit, but the man threatened to put her friends in even more trouble, and this made her emotions start going bonkers. All of a sudden, a giant chicken doll appeared, and Haruna instantly recognized that it was a necromancer's doll and not a megalo. They tried to run away from it, but it captured Haruna by sitting on top of her, so the gang tried their best to pull her away from it. Euclid begged the man not to hurt Haruna, but he said it was her who summoned the doll and brought up the fact that she swore never to speak or feel emotions again because her emotions brought chaos. He called her the harbinger of death, and this had her frozen in despair until Dai made a surprise appearance. He immediately recognized her as the teacher from Mately's Magic Academy, and she was surprised that he knew her, so he revealed that there were a lot of rumors about how powerful she was flying all around the underworld. He asked her what she wanted, and she replied that she couldn't sit idly by while someone was hurting one of her precious students. Sira blasted the doll with her shallow reversal technique, but it didn't even leave a mark on it, and Ayumu followed up by spamming punches at 500 and 600% of his power, but it only created some minor vibrations on the doll's body. Maelstrom started dragging the doll by its tail, while Ayumu and Sira tried their best to pull it up, but all it took was one magic blast from Dai to knock the doll away. Ayumu and the girls went to check on Maelstrom, who was now the one being crushed by the weight of the doll, and the doll suddenly vanished into a bright light. Maelstrom started chanting some weird words with a dead look in her eyes, and this manifested a huge beast that had flame abilities. Dai noticed that Ayumu didn't have Mistletoe with him, so she provided an assist by using a spell to teleport it to their location. Sira blocked a flame blast by the monster, allowing Ayumu to transform into his magic-clad form, and Maelstrom completed a final chant which allowed the monster to fire a massive flame blast which enveloped the area. The mystery man realized that the monster they were dealing with was the ultimate magic-clad weapon that Kyoko was talking about, and Dai revealed to Euclid that it didn't have an off switch because it was programmed to turn off automatically. She however pointed out that it was at risk of exploding now that it was out of control, and said that all hope depended on Ayumu being able to stop it. Ayumu told Sira to open up the magic barrier which was containing the monster so he could face the monster and save Maelstrom. When she did so, he walked towards Maelstrom, but got shot multiple times on the leg with flame lasers on his way to meet her. When he got to her, he asked why she was crying, and she asked him to save her right before the monster started to kick things into a higher gear. Maelstrom started to ask what was happening to her, and Ayumu tried to force himself inside another barrier, which was containing them, but she asked him to stay away so he wouldn't get blown to bits as well. However, Ayumu went into the barrier and hugged her as he claimed that he'd never abandon her. His riz was so powerful that it made her snap back to her senses, and the monster disappeared along with its explosive energy. The mystery man randomly decided to Pikachu Ayumu with a lightning blast before telling Eucliwood that he wouldn't give up until she grants his wish as he vanished into a dark mist. Afterwards, Eucliwood rejoined the gang, and on the way home, Maelstrom thanked Ayumu for saving her. Eucliwood told Ayumu and friends to go ahead because she needed to take a dump in the nearby forest. When they got home, Ayumu found a message she left for them where she apologized for bringing trouble to them despite their kindness while saying goodbye to them forever. Ayumu ran to the spot they left her, but couldn't find her there, so he went back to the Christmas tree they mounted and read her wish, which said that she wanted to spend the rest of her life with Ayumu and the guys. He read his own wish where he hoped for none of the other wishes to come true and cried out as he asked why it was only his that did come true. Haruna interrupted his moping session by playing a free kick with his head, and the girls motivated him to get back up so they could go find Eucliwood. A few months flew by, and despite their non-stop search for Eucliwood, they couldn't find her. Ayumu thought to himself about how the previous version of himself would have thrown in the towel, but realized that his current self wasn't willing to give up at all as he went back outside. He met up with Haruna, and they shared some hot potatoes together before she told him that she hasn't found any information on the necromancer. Ayumu said he hadn't found anything as well, and they were interrupted when Sira showed up, looking like she just survived a trip to the Dark Continent. When they asked her what happened, she revealed that she was attacked by a fellow conservative vampire ninja for abandoning her mission to unalive Eucliwood. She said she was naive because she thought her comrades would have information on Eucliwood and confirmed that she was feeling okay because it was her decision to head out in the first place. Just then, a delivery man showed up to deliver a violin which Haruna ordered, thinking it was a brand of spaghetti, and Ayumu offered to play it, but Sira declined before playing a beautiful melody that rocked the entire town. Later that evening, Ayumu ran into the mystery man, who he immediately identified as the other Eucliwood's other zombie known as the King of the Night. The king asked Ayumu if Eucliwood had grown tired of him since he didn't see her around, but Ayumu refused to answer him before the rest of the girls showed up. Ayumu stopped them from coming any closer, and the Night King guessed that Eucliwood had returned to the underworld before deciding to unalive all of them. Ayumu replied that he'd end him, but the Night King used a dark mist to choke him out before tearing off both of his legs. The King of the Night said it was time to unalive the girls and appeared behind them in an attempt to do so, but Sira sliced his hand off using her sword. In response, the Night King used his dark mist to create dark chains that wrapped her up and claimed that he was going to unalive all of them to drag Eucliwood back from the underworld. Haruna yelled at him not to use them as bait, but he replied that unaliving them was the only way to get Eucliwood back to the surface. Haruna argued that she'd rather have everyone alive when her friend comes back, and the Night King tried to shut her up with a mist attack, which ended up getting destroyed by a vampire ninja girl named Sarasvati, who arrived with a lightsaber and Jedi cosplay along with Maelstrom. Sarasvati reported to her associates that she'd found their target and requested some backup, and the Night King realized that he wasn't willing to be captured at that moment since his plan was to die. When he disappeared, Sarasvati's squad teleported in pursuit of him, while Ayumu wondered what he meant by wanting to die. While Haruna and Maelstrom tried to glue Ayumu's legs back to the rest of him.
Stop it. Get some help.
Sira met up with Siras, who called her a traitor and said she didn't wish to see her face ever again. Ayumu asked Maelstrom why she showed up with the conservative ninjas, and she replied that it was an emergency, implying that there was no time to fight amongst themselves before leaving to join the search for the Night King, since Ayumu's legs were glued the wrong way. Haruna had to carry him as they made their way back home, and Sira said she was heading out to continue searching for Eucliwood. A few days later, Ayumu got a call from Maelstrom, who told him that she'd figured out where the Night King lives and sent him his address, which was surprisingly close to their house. She said she hadn't told anyone else about this piece of information because she wanted Ayumu to be the first one to go after him, so Ayumu thanked her in a way that got her embarrassed. Ayumu shared the good news with Haruna, and they started making preparations to raid his apartment, unknown to them that Euclid was standing by the gate of their apartment. Sarah saw her and tried to run in to meet her, but got blasted with a mysterious attack that left her bloodied on the ground. The Night King who fired the attack told Euclid to come with him, so she quietly followed him but stopped to feed Sarah a bit of her blood, which made her regain consciousness briefly. Sarah woke up some hours later and informed Ayumu and Haruna about what she experienced earlier, so they rushed to the Night King's apartment where the Night King invited them to join him for dinner. At the dinner table, the Night King proved to be a hospitable host, as he even offered Haruna extras when she asked, but Ayumu wasn't buying any of his gentleman nonsense, as he demanded the release of Euclid. The Night King asked Ayumu how it felt to have an immortal body, and when Ayumu asked what he meant, he asked if Ayumu found his eternal life boring. Ayumu said he didn't care, and their conversation was interrupted when Maelstrom and her squad showed up. The Night King tried to offer them some grub, but they declined, so he grabbed on to Euclid. He noticed that the apartment was surrounded with ninjas, and Ayumu asked him to let go of Euclid, but he declined, saying that she'd run off somewhere if he did. The Night King used his dark magic to plant a bomb on Haruna's head, which he said would explode in a matter of minutes and take down everyone in the room. When he floated out of the window with Euclid, Ayumu reached out his hand to her, but she held back, allowing the Night King to vanish along with her. They shifted their attention to the bomb and noticed that it was a parasitic bomb when it jumped back and forth between Haruna and Maelstrom. They transferred the bomb to Maelstrom's head so that Haruna could defuse it, but when she cut the green cable, it ended up accelerating the time. So Ayumu took the bomb on his head. He leapt to the sky, wondering why Euclid didn't take his arm before it exploded in midair. Haruna, Sarah, and Maelstrom had fun while finding all of the different pieces of Ayumu's body all over town, and they brought all of them to one place, allowing his body to glue itself back together. Haruna and Maelstrom started arguing over the right to wake him up with a kiss, so Sarah decided to take matters into her own hands by using a special medicine which ended up being a secret poison from the ninja village that immediately unalived him again. Hours later, Sarah and Haruna sat beside Ayumu's unconscious body, wondering why he couldn't wake up. Sarah suggested that it was because he didn't want to wake up, and they held on to each other and watched him from the outside while Ayumu went through a series of emotional torture on the inside. In his mind, he saw all of the girls saying the most diabolical things to him and leaving him one by one despite his attempts to reach them. When Dai showed up, Haruna told her about Ayumu's condition and also confessed that she felt guilty about his situation given the fact that she was the one who had the bomb on her head in the first place. Dai said Ayumu had cast a spell on Haruna and that it was her turn to cast a spell on him before using a spell of her own to put Haruna to sleep, sending her into Ayumu's consciousness in the process. Ayumu was drowning in agony in his mind when several images of Haruna appeared and started telling him to disappear. He started considering their offer, causing his consciousness to wither away little by little until the real Haruna showed up and popped one of the fake Harunas like a balloon before asking him what he was doing. When Ayumu said they hate him, she kicked him into one of the fake Harunas, causing it to explode before destroying the rest of them herself. She kicked Ayumu in the face again when he said Euclid didn't like him and told him he needed to say it if he wanted to stay with her. Ayumu brought up the fact that she left with the Night King, so she gave him a harder headbutt than Tanjiro's and said he had to be as forceful as she is. She got on top of him, making him think she wanted to pummel him again, but instead she begged him to come back home to them before vanishing out of the dream world. Ayumu woke up in the real world shortly afterwards and gave her a head pat, which Sira and Dai watched proudly from far away. Afterwards, Sira met up with Sarasvati, who gave her a package which she claimed she needed, and they realized that a megalo had appeared in town which was under the control of the Night King. On a high tower somewhere in town, the Night King told Euclid that he had to destroy the city because she wouldn't let him die. Ayumu and Haruna arrived at the room and Ayumu told Euclid that it was time for them to go home together, but she replied by asking if it was peaceful without her around. Ayumu said it was but stated that it wasn't enough because they needed her and grabbed a piece of paper she was about to send to him which said that she caused him trouble and threw it away while saying that he didn't care. He asked the Night King what he was doing, so the evil lunatic replied that he made Euclid summon a megalo in town and added that his plan was to see Euclid have an emotional breakdown after seeing the city get destroyed. He asked her to unalive him and called her cruel for not doing so. But Ayumu replied that he didn't know a single thing about Euclid. At the moment, Syrah was at the tippy top of a very high tower staring at the giant megalo, which was emerging from the skies, and she remembered the words of Sarasvati when she gave her the mystery package which said that only a melody played by a vampire ninja who had drank the blood of Euclid could seal the gates of the underworld, meaning that only Syrah could pull it off. Syrah began playing the piano, causing the spirits in the area to start vanishing into thin air, and Euclid told the Night King that she didn't want to unalive any more of her friends, so he decided to cause her sadness by going after Ayumu. Ayumu tried to punch him several times, but the king yeeted him into the glass window nearby. Ayumu's injuries healed and Haruna suggested they both transform, so they both held onto Mistletoe as they transformed into their magic-clad girl forms. Syrah noticed that megalos were beginning to appear, so she started getting afraid until the rest of the vampire ninjas showed up and started playing music beside her. Ayumu and Haruna launched a combo attack with Mistletoe, which the Night King blocked with his black mist until they pushed their powers to the maximum, causing an explosion in the area which pushed Haruna away and left the two zombies to square off. Ayumu and the Night King went bar for bar, throwing haymakers at each other until Ayumu began to pummel the Night King at 800% strength while preaching about how the Night King knew nothing about how Euclid had been struggling to enjoy life in the human world. Ayumu claimed that he wouldn't let someone who had given up on life to say he understood Euclid as he punched a hole through the Night King's head. Afterwards, the Night King told Ayumu that he'd one day understand the pain of immortality, but Ayumu said he wouldn't because he had the girls.
Emotional, damn it!
The Night King said he'd had enough and begged Euclid to put an end to his suffering. So she whispered a word to him which made him disappear along with the megalo he was summoning in the city. Later that night, Ayumu held on to Euclid while demanding that she stayed with him, and to his surprise, she replied with her voice that she'd stay with him no matter what. Ayumu hugged her, and they said some more loving words to each other before Haruna came crashing into the room. Several days later, Ayumu and the girls went to a resort where all of the guys in the area couldn't help but ogle at the sight of Syrah's oversized milk factories. This got Haruna feeling jealous because of the skateboard-shaped body she had, and when Euclid walked out in a school swimsuit, she realized that even the lowly necromancer had more stuffing than her. Ayumu was chilling at the beach with the girls when Maelstrom and her friends showed up to join them. Maelstrom's friends invited Euclid to play with them, so they all played beach ball together, while Ayumu watched and Syrah was right there to call him a degenerate again. Syrah brought up the fact that Euclid was having fun and asked him if it was a difficult battle, but Ayumu replied by aura farming while claiming that it was no big deal since he was a zombie. Haruna reduced his aura points back to negative by throwing a beach ball in his face, and Dai was somewhere in the resort having a relaxing time as well. Ayumu walked to another section of the resort where he saw Sarasvati singing some of Rihanna's classics on stage and also noticed that Orito was one of the people in the crowd. He approached Orito and asked who the pathetic excuse for an idol was, so Orito revealed that she was a fast-rising star who goes by Lovely Carrara. Ayumu realized that his friend was obsessed with her, and Syrah was stunned when she saw Sarasvati performing on stage, so she went up there and asked what she was doing. Sarasvati said she wasn't doing any mission, but rather living her daily life as an idol named Lovely Carrara, and yapped some nonsense about how the world of idols was the most beautiful thing ever. Suddenly, they noticed that Syrah had overtaken Syrah in the idol rankings, so Sarasvati decided to challenge her to a stage battle. The two of them sang their favorite anime songs, while the crowd went crazy until Sarasvati decided to kick things up a notch by changing into a sus costume. Syrah matched her energy by putting on some cultured clothes of her own, which made the crowd scream so loudly that the roof nearly came off the building. They were preparing to have their next showdown when Haruna suddenly appeared on stage wearing some punk clothes and sang her own version of Kendrick Lamar's diss track, which got the crowd vibing so hard that she shot up the charts. Her performance got even wilder as she brought dangerous weapons and flame effects, which terrified everyone who had working brain cells but pleased the otakus in the crowd. Ayumu started crashing out as he tried to think of a way to stop this ear torture, and Euclid showed up looking very interested in Haruna's performance, so he asked her if she wanted to sing as well. Dai Sissy showed up and introduced a large machine which she said had the ability to absorb magic and transfer it to another person, meaning that it would allow him to temporarily take on Euclid's Oath of Silence. When Haruna's performance ended, the lights went off and softer music started playing as Euclid blessed the ears of the crowd as well as the viewers with some actually good music. Ayumu was putting on Euclid's armor while attached to the machine, and when he said he was happy for Euclid, he suddenly got hit with a huge wave of pain, which Dai said explained was coming from Euclid's magic inside him. Euclid suddenly stopped performing as she realized that the machine had turned off. But luckily Haruna was right there to share her magic with her, enabling them to have the cutest duet imaginable while Sarah and Sarasvati danced behind them. Ayumu started ogling over Sarah's bouncing cannons, and he said he wished all girls could wear fits that were as cultured as what she was putting on, which caused him intense pain due to the effects of the machine. All of a sudden, Mistletoe appeared and let out a voice which said he'd make Ayumu's wish come true. So Ayumu realized that this bizarre scenario was happening because of Euclid's power to affect reality. In the blink of an eye, the clothes of every girl in the area changed into Omlafin's uniforms, and Sira repaid Ayumu for his creepy wish by calling him the biggest piece of scum on earth while delivering a brutal axe kick that sent him through the ground. Several days later, Ayumu returned home after school and joined the girls at the dinner table to feast on another otherworldly calamity which Sira had prepared for them. Do you think Ayumu and company could beat Dai if she decided to turn evil? Let us know in the comments. That's all for today's video. If you like anime recaps like this, check out this video here.